The Alchemist Code, how to actually become the fourth archetype. There is a version of you that most men never reach. Not because it is impossible, not because God did not build the capacity for it into you, but because almost no one ever told you it existed, what it actually looks like, what it costs to get there, and what happens to a man who reaches it, but loses the thing that was supposed to keep him grounded inside of it. Tonight I am going to map the whole thing out, the full picture, what the fourth archetype is, what it does, what it costs, what it produces, and the two ways a man can reach it and still lose himself inside of it if he is not careful. This is the conversation I have been building towards since this channel started. Everything I have ever said on here lives underneath this one framework. Pay attention. There are 4 levels of masculine development. Not opinions, not motivational categories. 4 actual stages that every man moves through or gets stuck in, and the level a man is operating at determines almost everything about his life. His relationships, his finances, his peace, his impact, his legacy, everything. And most men spend their entire lives at level 2 without ever understanding why they cannot seem to break through to what they can feel they are supposed to be. The first level is the boy, not a child, a man operating in the psychology of a boy. He is reactive. His emotions run him. When things are good, he is good, and when things are hard, he falls apart, quits, blames, deflects. He has no real self-mastery. He is a product of his circumstances. When the environment is right, he functions, and when the environment goes wrong, he breaks. He does not govern himself. He is governed by whatever is happening around him. His identity is borrowed. His discipline is inconsistent. His ambition comes and goes depending on how he feels. Most men start here. The problem is that too many men stay here long past the point where life required them to move. The second level is the warrior. This is where most men who are serious about growth spend their time, and it is where most of them plateau. The warrior has woken up to something. He has decided he is going to build himself. He has picked up the discipline. He has started taking the gym seriously. He is reading, listening, investing in himself, fighting his way out of the boy psychology that was running him. He is proving himself to himself and to the world around him. He is in conquest mode. He is building the capacity that the boy never developed, and that is real, that is necessary. But the warrior has a ceiling, because the warrior's identity is still built on the fight. He needs an enemy, he needs the grind, he needs opposition to feel alive and purposeful. When the fighting stops, he does not always know who he is. He has built a tremendous amount of capacity and very little wisdom. He has more power than he has discernment. And power without discernment eventually creates destruction even when the man behind it has good intentions. The third level is the king. The king has moved beyond proving himself. He has taken everything the warrior built and started to actually deploy it in service of something larger than himself. He is strategic. He is building a domain, a family, a business, a community, a legacy. And he is leading it. He is not just fighting anymore. He is governing. He is thinking 3 moves ahead. He has learned when to act and when to be still. He has learned the difference between reacting and responding. He commands respect not by demanding it, but by being the kind of man that people naturally submit to because his competence, character, and consistency have made him trustworthy. The king is a remarkable man, a genuinely rare man in this generation. But even the king has something he has not yet fully developed, and that is what separates the third level from the fourth, the alchemist. This is the fourth archetype, and to understand it, you need to understand where the name comes from, because it is not accidental. The ancient alchemists were the scientists, philosophers, and mystics of the medieval world who devoted their lives to one pursuit: turning base metals into gold, turning lead, which was common and worthless, into gold, which was rare and precious. And they believed that transformation at that level was not just a chemical process, it was a spiritual one. You had to understand the nature of the material you were working with. You had to apply exactly the right heat. You had to be patient with the process, and you had to know what you were trying to produce before you started. The Alchemist archetype takes that exact same principle and applies it to a man's lived experience. Pain becomes wisdom. Failure becomes strategy. Betrayal becomes discernment. Heartbreak becomes depth. Loss becomes compassion. The alchemist does not just survive what he goes through, he converts it. He takes the lead of his hardest seasons and produces gold from it. And that conversion process, that refusal to waste what the fire produces, is what separates the fourth level from every level beneath it. The warrior survives the fire. The king builds after the fire. The alchemist uses the fire itself as the instrument of his transformation. What does this actually look like in a man's life? Because I do not want this to stay theoretical. The alchemist is the man other men come to not just for answers, but for presence. You feel it when you are around him. There is a settledness in him that is not complacency. It is the peace of a man who has been genuinely tested and knows exactly who he is, because he watched himself under pressure and came out the other side with a clear picture of what he is made of. He is not performing composure. He earned it. He has been through things, real things. And instead of becoming bitter or hardened or cynical, which are the counterfeit versions of wisdom, he became understanding. He can look at a young man still in the warrior stage and see himself 20 years ago and hand him something real instead of judgment. He can look at failure and immediately start asking what this is trying to teach him, rather than spiraling into self-condemnation. He carries his scars without being defined by them. And that is the thing. His testimony is not something he is ashamed of or hiding. His testimony is one of his most powerful tools, because every hard thing he went through and converted has become a map for someone else who is standing in the same valley he already came through. He has also integrated all four pillars, not mastered, integrated. He understands that his body is a tool for his mission, and he takes care of it accordingly. He is not grinding himself into the ground. He is building something sustainable. He has his financial house in order, not necessarily wealthy in the way the world defines it, but free from the kind of financial panic that controls decisions and shrinks men. His competence is deep. He knows his craft and he keeps sharpening it. And at the center of all of it is his relationship with God, not religion, covenant, the daily reality of a man who has walked through enough to know beyond any doubt that he was not walking alone through any of it. That is the alchemist, not perfect, but integrated, and that integration is what makes him rare. He has also integrated all four pillars, not mastered, integrated. He understands that his body is a tool for his mission, and he takes care of it accordingly. He is not grinding himself into the ground. He is building something sustainable. He has his financial house in order, not necessarily wealthy in the way the world defines it, but free from the kind of financial panic that controls decisions and shrinks men. His competence is deep. He knows his craft and he keeps sharpening it. And at the center of all of it is his relationship with God, not religion, covenant, the daily reality of a man who has walked through enough to know beyond any doubt that he was not walking alone through any of it. That is the alchemist, not perfect, but integrated, and that integration is what makes him rare. Now let me show you this archetype in Scripture, because the Bible is full of alchemist men, and the most powerful example in all of human history is Joseph. And I want you to sit with this one because most people tell Joseph's story and summarize it as a nice story about perseverance. It is not. It is the most complete picture of alchemist-level transformation that exists in written history. Joseph is sold into slavery by his own brothers, the people who were supposed to be his tribe. He's bought by an Egyptian officer. He serves faithfully and rises to the top of that household. Then the officer's wife lies on him, and he is thrown into prison. He does not just get knocked down once. David is the second example, a warrior who became a king. But what made David an alchemist was not the victories. It was what he did with the failures. David committed real sins. He took a woman who was not his. He arranged the death of her husband to cover it. He failed as a father in ways that cost him his children's futures. He carried grief that he could not outrun. And what did David do with all of it? He wrote, "The Psalms are the product of a man who refused to waste his pain. Lament after lament, praise after praise, confession after confession. Honest, raw, unfiltered. He did not clean up his story for the audience. He converted his darkness into the most widely read poetry in human history. 3,000 years later, men who are going through the worst moments of their lives open to the Psalms and feel seen. Because David went through it and refused to throw away what it produced. His wounds became someone else's comfort. That is the alchemist function. Daniel is the third example. And this one is important for men who are operating in environments specifically designed to erase who they are. Daniel is taken from his homeland and exiled into Babylon. Babylon was the most powerful empire in the world at that time, and it ran a deliberate program to take young men from conquered nations and reprogram them. New names, new food, new language, new culture, new identity. The whole system was designed to turn Daniel into a Babylonian, and Daniel did not just resist it. He thrived inside of it without being changed by it. He rose to the highest levels of that empire, not because he compromised who he was, but because he refused to. His distinction was his promotion. And when kings tried to trap him and have him executed, his convictions were what saved him. He did not just survive Babylon. He changed it. He converted the most powerful hostile environment on earth into a testimony that has outlasted the empire itself. That is what an alchemist does in hostile territory. He does not become the environment. He changes it. Now I need to talk about why the alchemist absolutely must stay submitted to God, because this is the pivot point that determines whether all of this becomes legacy or catastrophe. Solomon. And I've talked about Solomon before in the context of choosing the wrong woman. But what is relevant here is what Solomon represents at the level of this conversation. Solomon was an alchemist-level man. The wisdom God gave him was unprecedented. He understood things about creation, about human nature, about governance, about strategy, about beauty, that no human being before him had possessed at that level. He had transmutation capacity that was supernatural in its origin, and without God at the center of how he wielded it, it still could not protect him from himself. His wives turned his heart. His wisdom could not save him when his covenant eroded. And that tells you something critical about the fourth archetype. Now let me talk about the dark side, because this is where most men who reach the fourth archetype actually fall. And there are two versions of this, and both of them are dangerous. The first dark side is the alchemist who goes cold. He has done the work. He has converted the pain. He has built real wisdom. And somewhere in that process, he lost his compassion. He became detached. He looks at men who are still struggling, and instead of extending the map he built through his own suffering, he tells them to figure it out the way he did. His transformation became about his own impressiveness. His wisdom became a tool for control rather than elevation. He uses what he knows to manage the people around him rather than develop them. He reads a room, and instead of asking how he can serve it, he asks how he can leverage it. And at the extreme end of this, the pride script applies directly. He slips into a version of what Lucifer fell into. I am the one who transmutes. I built this. I did the work. I figured it out. I do not need God. I do not need accountability. I do not need anyone. A man with alchemist-level capacity operating without a covering is one of the most dangerous configurations that exists. He can move the world, but he will move it toward himself. And everything he builds will eventually reflect the absence of the thing that should have been at the center of it. Power without covenant is not the fourth archetype. It is a counterfeit wearing its face. The second dark side is quieter, and it catches men who genuinely love God and genuinely love what they are building. It is the alchemist who cannot stop. His engine is transformation. His entire identity is built around converting, improving, upgrading, becoming. And that engine, if he never develops the capacity to let it rest, if he never learns to be present inside of what he has already built, robs him of everything he was building it for. His children are right in front of him. His wife is standing beside him. The fruit is already on the tree, and he cannot feel any of it because his whole nervous system is calibrated for the next level. He is always standing on the shore, looking at the next horizon, and never fully inhabiting the land he already crossed water to reach. He checks the metrics when he should be watching his son play. He is thinking about the next script when his daughter is talking to him. He is strategizing the next move when the moment he is actually in is the one that is going to matter to the people around him long after he is gone. And here is the thing that makes this dark side spiritually serious. Ingratitude at that level is a quiet form of telling God that what he has already provided is not enough, that the answer to the prayer you prayed was not the gift it was supposed to be. Solomon captured this in Ecclesiastes, the man who had more than any human being in recorded history, who built more, accomplished more, experienced more than any man who had ever lived, sat down at the end of all of it and called it vanity, not because it was meaningless, but because he had chased the next horizon his entire life and never fully received what God had placed in the life he was already living. The alchemist who cannot appreciate what he has is not failing at discipline or ambition. He is failing at presence. And presence is what the people who need him most cannot get from anywhere else. So how does a man actually become this? And this is what I need you to hear clearly, because there is no shortcut and there is no curriculum. You become an alchemist by going through things and making a decision every single time about what you are going to do with what you went through. That is the whole code. Every time something breaks you, every time something fails, every time someone betrays you or a season destroys something you built, you have a choice. You can let it make you bitter, closed, cynical, hard. Or you can ask what this is trying to produce in you and then commit to producing it. That is it. That is the alchemist code. It is not one decision. It is the same decision made 1,000 times in 1,000 valleys until it becomes the automatic response of a man who has trained himself to look for the gold in everything. Because here is the final thing I want you to understand about this archetype. The alchemist is not building just for himself. The boy builds for himself. The warrior builds for himself. Even the king is largely building his own domain. The alchemist is the only archetype whose output extends naturally beyond his own life, without him having to force it. Because when a man converts his own pain into wisdom and hands that wisdom to the people coming up behind him, when the wound he healed becomes the map someone else uses to navigate the same territory, he is building something that cannot be contained by the boundary of his own lifetime. His testimony becomes someone else's survival guide. His scar becomes someone else's permission to keep going. His story becomes the proof that the valley is survivable, and that what comes out of a man who refuses to waste what the fire produces is something that does not look like what went in. That is legacy. That is what the fourth archetype is actually building, not just a better life for himself, a better map for the generation that comes after him. You have already been through something. Every man watching this has. The question is not whether you have material to work with. You do. The question is whether you are going to convert it or just carry it. Whether you are going to let the fire that has already touched your life produce something that outlasts you. Whether you are going to become a man who hands his sons and his brothers and the men around him something real from what he went through, or whether you are going to let it sit in you as bitterness and missed potential and a story that ends with you instead of continuing through you. The alchemist is not the man who had the easiest path. He is the man who had the hardest one and refused to waste a single step of it. That is the fourth archetype. That is the man this channel has been building toward since day one. That is who God has been preparing you to become through every single thing you have already survived. Now go build. Walk with God while you work for the crown. When He crowns you king, tell the world of the truth you found. That's king-level mindset. Kings don't beg, kings don't bow, kings build.